record
Hang
on
on
this
there.
computer. It says we're live on custom live streaming service, and that would be our Facebook Live fans.
Are we live?
Let
Awesome.
me see.
Okay.
See
There we
what's
go.
happening. Are we live? Let me press play. Oh, I've lost Evan altogether now. Oh, he's back.
Okay, I'm good.
Excellent.
I'm back.
All right. We also
think.
appear to be live. So let me go over here.
There
There's so much to do to be a producer and a member of the show. Hey, it's Wednesday night, everybody.
It's on you tonight, man. I'm sorry.
I'll
buddy.
do my best. Welcome back, everybody. It's Wednesday night. This is the Evan and Aaron show. I am the Aaron portion of that.
And I am the Evan portion of that.
Lovely
and
Reds
representing our ball club there, buddy. There you go.
The
Yes.
Red Legs. Loving it.
Welcome,
loving it.
everyone.
Yeah. Yes, welcome indeed. Hope you're all doing good out there. It was a nice day. Tonight, Evan and I want to talk about some of the things that we experienced over the weekend. And yes, this is all still going on, so this is what we're still going to talk about. And just in case you forgot, let me throw this out at the top. We're approaching 2 million cases, confirmed cases of COVID in the United States. We've gone over 121,000 deaths, and 21 states are currently trending upward again after a lot of these
Hey, Aaron,
stay-at-home orders.
I literally just saw it 10 minutes ago. We are over 2 million.
Are over 2 million. So, hey, congratulations.
Yep.
So much winning in America because of that. So, it's easy to forget what's going on.
Scam.
It's easy to let your guard down because the weather has gotten nice. When this all started, it was the middle of winter and it sucked and it was easy to stay home. And, now you go out because you want to. It's tough being cooped up, and I get it. And for those of you who are going to ask the question right off the bat, well, you guys went out and protested this weekend and marched and were involved in large crowds, and that is true, and it crossed my mind. I wore a mask. I used a lot of hand sanitizer. I know Evan had his with him in his pocket. I actually doubled up on masks. But I'll be honest, in this particular moment, I thought the risk reward, not reward, but you understand the phrase. The risk aspect of it had a lot more to do with standing in solidarity with people, expressing this righteous outrage, this anger, this notion that we're just not going to take the people who are sworn to serve and protect us to no longer do that. And hopefully we don't see a lot of cases come about because of that. But Evan, you were downtown. I was downtown. We saw each other, but we were also there as part of other groups, which was great. We had a lot of different people out. It was a lot bigger experience. Tell me what you thought about the sit-in itself. You were a little bit better placed than I was to hear some of the speakers as well. So what's your big takeaway from this weekend's gathering?
Well, I think first of all, man, I know that this is there or whatever, but kudos to who's there. And it's huge. I mean, those messages that colors, all different races, all different backgrounds, identities, we all have to be a part of this. And so, like I said, it was really good to see you there this weekend, brother. And I'm glad that you were there. So, but I think the big thing for me, it was really interesting being there to sit in, because I think it was very, how should I say this? I was able to separate those people who were doing the whole performance allyship, and then the people who were really there to truly learn. And let me explain. There were several times where, I just want to say, please, white people, sit down. Just sit down. Just sit down. You're doing too much right now. This young lady was and she was talking to her friends on the, and then when they got there, it was a, hey, how are you? I mean, and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm trying to listen, it's like, come on. Anyway, but I'm going to tell you, for the most part, looking around, it was, and I've used this term before, man, it was surreal. It really was. It was surreal to the point to where, I sat there, and number one, as a black man, I sat there and literally was in tears at times. Yeah. Looking around and seeing all these, to support a cause that helps me.
Yeah.
And so I think just looking around and taking that in, it was overwhelming. It was surreal, but there's something different about this. There's something different. And I've been watching a lot of stuff getting ready for different classes I have to teach in the fall. And two of those classes are Intro to Social Justice and African American History. And did a lot of prep work for that today. And just in watching some of that stuff, did we have other times in American history that this could have happened? Absolutely. But is this the absolute right time for it to happen? Yeah, probably, because of what we have now as far as technology to keep us aware. We've had several generations go through and see the bullshit that racism produces. Like, let's take care of reactions. What did you think? I mean, from things, it was nonviolent, but what your point of view as far as?
I got to experience a couple different aspects of it. The sit-in, I thought, was really, really well organized. A lot of people came out. We filled the entirety of the State House lawn. I went for the RIFRA gathering a few years back. And I felt there were a lot of people there, and that was a good gathering, but this was amazing. It was an incredible number of people. It was a sit-in, so it was meant to be peaceful. Obviously the march took on a slightly different tone, but it was, again, still peaceful, but you had a lot of people expressing themselves. There were a lot of chants. And I felt that, the sit-in was in solidarity for a national moment of mourning, and more of a national focused event. They did speak about some things. I know Hogsett was there as well, but it was still largely more a broader focused issue. The march, it took on more of a localized tone. Definitely a lot of talk about Drejon Reed, which is a really interesting data point in all of this, because there are a lot of question marks. We don't really know what's gone on. And until we have those details, it's really hard to have a really, really much stronger opinion about it. But it definitely, the tone involved Drejon Reed, it invoked Breonna Taylor, and of course George Floyd. So I think people were, really demonstrating how this national thing impacts us locally. There's been a lot of talk about, what's the goal of the protests, and what's it accomplishing. And the fact is we've already seen it accomplishing things. We've seen here in Indianapolis,
right.
The police department and the city are going to make some changes. We can get into the details of that later as to whether or not people think that's enough, not going too far. There's this whole defund the police movement, which, requires some explanation. Maybe not the greatest slogan, but it actually does make a lot of sense if you're willing to take the time to get involved in it. So for this, I thought it was a good moment. It was great to see Indianapolis do this, and it's been great to see this be sustained, because it would be very easy to say, okay, well, they met our demands of this sort of thing. But the fact is, we have to keep the pressure on to make them know they actually have to follow through on this. They can't just say we're going to do it. I mean, chokeholds have been banned in New York City for years. That did not save Eric Garner's life. So, some of this stuff is possibly window dressing, and that's why people are still in the streets. People are still in the streets because there's, a lot of misinformation about Drejon Reed. That's why people in Indianapolis are probably still marching around. Breonna Taylor's got no justice happening for her so far. There's a lot to unpack with all this, but I was really, really proud to share it with the Indianapolis community and be a part of it.
What was so interesting about all of that is the fact that we had several things leading up, obviously, and we know this, to George Floyd's death, and it was, and I hate to use the phrase the perfect storm, but it really was. It was the constant barrage of Black bodies being murdered that finally came to a head. And as far as what are the protests, what are they accomplishing? And we'll talk about that later, or we can start talking about now. But I think one of the things that it's accomplishing is it's getting people to do exactly what and I'm gonna brag on this, Aaron. It's exactly what we've been doing for years now, man. It's just sitting down and being real with each other and just talking through the BS and just say, hey, look, okay, what is it like to hear this? And you're not asking questions like, hey, what do Black people think about violence and stuff? No. Go do your homework. I mean, there's plenty of things you can Google, but no, asking like real questions. And those real questions consist of, Evan, how are you? Because those are the questions that I want to hear. I don't want to hear these general questions about, what do Black people think? No, ask me how I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you how I'm doing. And I think, and once again, there's no way in the world that I would ever consider speaking for all Black people, because quite frankly, that would go against exactly what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
This country has seen Black people as a monster. Now, hey, what Black people think? Now it's not, hey, you okay right now? We're not okay.
Yeah. No one should be okay in the face of this.
This is heavy. This is really heavy, man. And this is true.
Yeah.
No. That's what I've got to say about that, man. The white community has some lifting to do.
Yeah.
And, there are members of the white community, and quite frankly, Aaron, once again, man, it's not just because we're doing a podcast together. You've been doing lifting for a while, and I have to do this. You have to. That I think that's one of the very, very positive things that are coming from this movement.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you. I do it because it seems like it's the right thing to do. But I think we also have to view it. I watched I Am Not Your Negro last night. It's a movie by Raoul Peck based on some writings by James Baldwin. About sort of a look at America through the eyes of three of his good friends, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King, all of whom were killed for speaking out about the desire to have equality and civil rights in this country. So that alone says it. But there's a quote from Martin Luther King where he says, when he was speaking specifically about, the bus issues and things like that. And he was speaking to his own people at the time, saying that not only do we have a right to sit in these seats on this bus, but it's our duty to do that, to take action. And I think right now the duty of white allies right now is to recognize when it's time to be silent and that this is a moment where Black people are trying to, and people of color are trying to assert their own empowerment, but simultaneously bear witness to that and support them when it's needed. And it'll become obvious when it's necessary. You know, this isn't superhero time or anything like that. But when someone in your own demographic, someone in your own group speaks out and says something ignorant like all lives matter in the face of Black Lives Matter, casually educate them. Mm-hmm. Take the time to educate them, and educate yourself so you know where to direct them, which types of books, what types of things, what types of historical events they can look at and say, hey, you know, maybe you need to reevaluate this situation when an entire group of people have been screaming at you for hundreds of years that what happens to them is not right. It behooves you to take an interest in it, or you're kind of an asshole. It makes you a bad person. And it is the height of white privilege to ignore the issue. For people who don't think it exists, you have privilege by simply being able to ignore the issue. It doesn't impact you personally. That's privilege. And we have an absolute duty to do something about that if we care about the ideals of this country. It's a real shame to see some of the same things. In watching that movie last night, I was absolutely blown away by footage and pictures of Martin Luther King being yelled at by white Southerners holding swastikas. Yeah. This is less than 20 years after the end of World War II, and these nitwits are carrying swastikas to try to silence a man for asserting his equality. Before I get too far, I do want to say we do have some people who've tuned in tonight.
Good.
Big thank you, of course. Taylor's here. Taylor's got questions. Gabe Reynolds, loving the Wankers jersey. I do what I can. Taylor's got a question. She said, thoughts on some of the back and forth between the quote unquote celebrity urge to vote and the reality of the actual system we're seeking to overhaul. If I understand that question, or actually I'll pass that one to you, Evan. What are your thoughts on, a lot of this talk about get out and vote? The one thing I'll say about that is, hey, people in Atlanta yesterday tried to get out and vote, it seemed to be a pretty systemic project to keep them from voting. So your thoughts on this urge to vote and the reality of the system that we're looking to overhaul?
Right. Yeah, man, I tell you, LeBron James had a great tweet today. He tweeted in response to Atlanta's mayor, where she was saying, hey, I went around and checked, and this was bad, and blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And LeBron said, you know what, I get the idea that, your vote matters, and I get that we put that out there, but the fact is that what if we're voting in a system that is part of the inherent racism of this country? And it's a great point, because when you look at the end of the Civil War, I mean, you see Southern whites and our government doing everything they can to make sure that blacks aren't accepted back into the fold, quote unquote. They did everything they could, and that was the beginning of the first real mass incarceration movement. And once again, if you are found to be a vagrant, if you're found to be loitering, you're put in prison, you go to jail, and you lose your voting rights. And so that's a way that they could make sure, from even the earliest parts after the Civil War, that African Americans didn't have a voice. And it's still happening today. Let's be honest. I mean, any one of us, if something like that were to happen, if we go to our local voting polling place and there's some really big issues, what are we going to do? What can we do as American citizens to say, hey, you know what? No, we need to vote more. We need to have more time to vote. Okay, we could say that. But the fact of the matter is that it would take forever to do that in an African-American district. Mm-hmm. But if we here in Fishers had some problems or something like that, the way things are set up right now, I would be willing to bet that we would have another opportunity to vote. Mm-hmm. And that's not, I'm not trying to be racist or discriminative of my own. It's just, I call it the way I see it.
Yeah.
And so I think that the big celebrity push to go and vote, yeah, that's great, but not all of us are voting at a place where we can just stroll in and stroll out. I mean, the mayor of Atlanta said, hey, I went to the suburbs and there were white folks just able to walk in, vote, and walk out, and it was easy. Why can't it be that easy in the other districts?
It begs so many questions. I mean, if first off, why is it so difficult to vote, period, at all?
Yeah.
What does it say about any political party, and obviously a political party, but what does it say about any political party that wants to make it more difficult for people to vote? What does it say about a system that seeks to disenfranchise people, to take their voting rights away from them? And specifically about a state like Georgia, who has already been through what they went through in 2018. It was, I'll say it, I think it was a stolen election. Stacey Abrams should be the governor of Georgia. And I think we're going to see, a continued attempt like this into November. To your point, let's see what happens in Florida. Florida has been a reliably red state for a while, and now a lot of people who've been disenfranchised because of their criminal past are out and can vote again. And I'm going to imagine that a majority people of color and majority impoverished people who are really excited to be able to use their voice for the first time in quite a while. Yeah, I mean, we need systemic changes in almost every aspect. The irony of people who say they voted for Trump as a thumbs up to the system. Well, ironically, the system seems to have grown a lot stronger under this presidency. That he is really in a lot of ways circumventing certain things, but not for their, how to put this appropriately. He's taking certain institutions and absolutely instilling them with authoritarianism, like the Department of Justice, while simultaneously just destroying other institutions. So I don't think we're seeing the kind of change that the people who thought, okay, I'm going to take a punt on this one and see what I can do, who maybe thought it would bring about some positive change. And I just don't see any of that. Calling for police officers to be, less nice to people they're arresting, to not really uphold their duty when we already know it's an ingrained culture, this warrior mentality.
Governors to dominate their streets, and making sure that happens.
It's completely anti-citizen, and it's sort of the logical end to us looking the other way for so long. I'll piggyback on something Taylor just brought up as well about, how a lot of cities that have some of the worst police brutality are headed by Democrats, are supposedly run by people who say they have their best interest at hand, and that's clearly not been the case. It is sadly a lesser of two evils, and there are an awful lot of Democrats who believe in this, tough on crime. Clinton did it, Biden did it, the whole super predators thing from back in the day and all that. It's still a very much an us versus them kind of thing, and the system needs to be changed entirely. That's the point of the defund the police movement. It's no good to try to hold officers accountable for things when qualified immunity exists, when this blue line exists of people who are ostensibly the good ones, but not holding their peers to any sort of guidelines to hold them accountable. And that has got to change. So when people talk about defunding the police, they're not saying we're going to get rid of a police force entirely, but along those lines, police have to be social workers. They have to deal with the mentally ill. They have to deal with traffic issues. They have to deal with fatalities and all these things. What do we want our police to be doing for us? That's a question we need to ask. What do we want our government to be doing for us? That's the question we have to ask with our votes. What's the type of person we're voting in? And I think far too often the vote simply goes to a Democrat or a Republican, because people believe they just got to retain power, and hopefully the next guy will be a good one and do something about it. I know there are plenty of people who probably voted for Trump simply because they believe in Republican ideals and they couldn't see themselves voting for Hillary Clinton. And we've got to get away from that mentality a little bit. We've got to, this,
absolutely.
Again, I'm going back and forth, but I'm trying to draw parallels between, it's guys with good intentions who think they're going to join the police force and change it from the inside. It doesn't happen. So we as a community have to talk about our expectations and what we hope to be getting from a police force that we spend lots of taxpayer dollars on. And, I'm angry about it. So I can't even imagine people who are abused by this system on a regular basis feel about it.
Yeah. And Aaron, one of the things that we need to really consider, and like you said, to be able to change our minds, I think a shot will help us change our minds. I think it is time for the halftime shot, my friend. And I believe that this week you have the honor to honor our bartender of the week.
Our bartender of the week. She's actually a server. I don't know if she's a bartender, but I'm going to say shout out to Chelsea. Chelsea's always got just a wonderful personality. Loves to see you, but should put you in your place too, because that's what we love about our folks up there. They're happy to serve, but take no guff. But anyway, saw some photos from her and some friends floating down the river this week. It was great to see. Miss her, miss everybody up there. So to you Northsiders, cheers. Sláinte.
Cheers. Sláinte. Oh.
Okay. Do you have something else, or should I go back? Wow. We've got Daver and Taylor and some people writing into us.
Catholic version of Bushmill.
Oh, lovely.
What I was going to say real quick about the police was we had a lively conversation, you and then I forget her name on your post, but it was kind of just real sweet. But we have to figure out, what do we want? Police officers turned a militarized police skilled in walking neighborhoods, talking to people, finding out who they were, being able to interact and to say, you know what, hey, that might.
Oh. Please come back, Evan.
Members, it changed. I won't get into to get to, but my take of it, man, we really, I think, need to ask ourselves as a country, what do we want these people to look like as in their abilities. So there you go.
You've been breaking up a little bit, Evan. I'm not sure if that's me or you, but hopefully it comes through. Hopefully it comes through good in post. A couple questions. I'm going to let you take this one. Do you want to talk about Candace Owen?
She's trash, man. She's trash. That's just my initial. As far as Candace Owen is concerned, to sound like an old white, but with Candace Owens, man, and Aaron, you're freezing up on me and stuff like that, and you come back in and all that good stuff, but I know you're still there. So I'll just keep talking about Owens. For me, represents African Americans have had to do in throughout the years. African Americans have had to placate to a lot of things that white America has told it to say and told it to believe in. Do I believe that she is an intelligent woman? Yes. Do I believe that and what happened? Oh,
You keep freezing up
did
a
I
little
cut
bit.
out?
Yeah, you keep freezing up
Oh
a little bit.
no,
Yeah, I'm not. I'm
that
it.
sucks.
Yeah, I keep looking at my connection and I'm doing okay. So, but you keep coming back in. So hopefully
Can
that you're coming through as well. Go ahead.
What if I get off Wi-Fi? What if I just get off Wi-Fi and just totally just go data on this? Will that work?
It should be fun.
Okay,
I
that's what
mean,
I'm gonna do then.
you should remain
Man.
connected. Hopefully.
Okay, you're still hearing me, right?
Yep, absolutely. David
Okay.
said Chatham celebrated their 10-year anniversary tonight. That is correct. Oop, we
Oh,
actually just
excellent.
said their name out loud now.
Oh,
Oops.
dang.
Anyway,
Oh well.
our favorite place celebrated their 10-year anniversary tonight. Forgot about
Excellent.
that.
Happy for him.
Yeah.
Did you hear anything I said about Candace Owens?
I heard a little bit about what you said about Candace Owens,
Okay.
and I largely agree with you. I think she's one of many people who are intelligent, have put in the time and energy, but they're playing a role. You know, she plays a role for Fox News to sort of spout these particular ideas so that they have cover. She is their cape, and it's hard to just go beyond that because once you realize that somebody is that, it becomes difficult to take them seriously.
But and what I was saying is that this isn't new. I mean, it's not new, right? I mean, we all have heard of Clarence Thomas, right? And so I'm not saying that Candace Owens isn't in her own mind, believing that she has our best interest in mind as African Americans. The issue is that she is bought into something that I think some African Americans throughout history have bought into, and that is what white media is telling them to do, telling them to accept, telling them to say, and then therefore, like you said, being that that person that they can stick out in front of the podium and say, hey, look, Black people, this is the way you should be thinking. And they're not fooling anybody. That's the issue.
Let's face it, there's probably not a whole lot of Black people tuning in to Candace Owens' show on Fox News.
Maybe her mama.
She isn't there to try to sway that thought. She's there so that your granddad has a talking point and can say, see, I can say these things because she says it. Yes. I can denigrate an entire group of people because she went on TV and said it. It makes it okay for me.
Yep. Right.
And that's why she exists. It's why Omarosa was hired at the White House. It's why somebody answer me this. Anybody jump in anytime you want to.
Oh, here we go.
Ben Carson is a fucking brain surgeon. And by all accounts, he's a very, very good brain surgeon.
Yes.
The fuck does he know about housing and urban development?
Housing and urban development. Yes.
If you'd have said let's put him in charge of some medical related stuff, I'd have no problem with it. I'd look at you side eye because I think Ben's got. I think he's a weird dude, but he may be very intelligent while holding a scalpel and staring at somebody's hypothalamus. But that doesn't mean he knows. He's also not from a background of having to deal with housing and urban development in America. The man was firmly middle class before he was a brain surgeon. Right. His family did not live in the projects. He does not understand what is needed in this particular situation. And yes, every administration appoints somebody that doesn't deserve the job because they helped out during the campaign. I get that aspect. But man, talk about just handing out raffle tickets here. And Ben Carson serves that purpose again. I'm going to
tell you.
How many times has Trump turned and said, that's my Black friend? And he's not even hiding it.
I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. I'm going to tell you exactly how this conversation goes.
I have to fill the Department of Housing and Urban Development?
Yes, you do.
Who's the nearest black guy that we have?
That would be Ben Carson.
Okay, he's probably good for it then.
Right.
Hey guys, how you doing? I'm in the middle of the podcast. Okay, I'll give you a shout out. Awesome. I love being outside.
Only on Facebook Live, everybody. Only when you go live can you wave at the neighbors.
Yes, and I did my impression of Donald Trump. That's awesome. But anyway, that's how that conversation went. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it.
Yep.
Other questions? What we got, man?
People just commenting. People tuning in. Really appreciate it. TJ, to answer your question, mainly to not try to show bias toward any particular thing. Everybody knows where we hang out, and we just call them by that.
Is that TJ Turner?
No. TJ McDonald is Nick's younger brother. Sorry, I'm just outing everybody on the internet tonight.
No, that's cool. That's all right.
I'll put your address out here in a minute.
Soch, you got to put the Soch out there.
Something I do want to talk about, because it does seem like specifically, you look at white people online and they're like, why are they still marching? Why can't I get to my bank? Oh my God, this is so inconvenient. As if having a knee on the back of your neck isn't inconvenient.
Right.
But the reason why is to try to enact change. And there's been, there's already been things that have happened. We've talked about the banning of chokeholds. We've talked about people getting charged. We need to see somebody involved in the whole Breonna Taylor thing get charged.
Yes, we do. And the two cops, they announced the names of the two cops in.
And Drejon Reed.
Yeah, Drejon's.
Now, let me talk something out with you, Evan, because it would be easy to just be angry at everybody in every situation. But I have a unique thought on the whole Breonna Taylor thing, or to me, I think it's unique. Sure. And that is, we can talk about whether or not no-knock raids should happen or not. I don't believe they should. And
it's very Gestapo-ish.
It's a big movement to get that changed, especially in Louisville where the incident happened.
Right.
But let's, the world doesn't exist in a vacuum. People decided to join the police force, and this is something, that departments have decided that they consider somebody dangerous. They consider somebody an immediate threat. So this is why they enact this. So if you're one of those officers entrusted to do that, I have a hard time necessarily saying those officers deserve to be charged with murder, because, and I know where people are going to get me on this, but they were carrying out orders. They had no reason to believe the intelligence presented to them was wrong. So blaming the police officers for this death is like, again, not holding, Nazi officers accountable. And I know I'm walking down a bad alley now. I know this is a bit of a bad analogy.
I got you though, man.
I'm saying the police officers in that incident didn't act with malice toward Breonna Taylor. They acted with the type of force they were trained to use, which again, we can have that discussion if you want, but they used the training that they had been given to follow an order that they thought was legitimate. They had no reason to believe it was not. Now, the people who should have known better, the people who knew that the person they were actually serving on was already in custody, those people deserve to be reprimanded, to lose their jobs, and probably the chief of police, simply because you have to oversee this stuff, and the buck stops with the guy at the top of the ladder. So,
sure.
This is me talking it out a little bit. And hopefully that's a safe enough space, because it doesn't take a whole lot. I read this great article today on Medium, written from the perspective of an ex-police officer, and he was talking about the culture and the system.
The bastard officer?
Yeah, and I really hated that headline, because it's going to turn a lot of people off before they ever read it.
Right.
But I also understand the point he's making, and that was that the second you've chosen to join, you may not realize it, but the second you've chosen to join and be a part of it is to really give away some of your own thoughts and beliefs, to no longer, you aren't afforded the ability to make these individual decisions for yourself any longer. And I think it's definitely a conversation that we need to have. But I don't know if the focus is necessarily correct on just focusing on those officers. Yes, they pulled the trigger, but I have a feeling that if they are decent human beings, that they will never, for the rest of their lives, forget that they took an innocent person's life. I may be wrong. I may be wrong, but
so,
I don't know. It's something I've been trying to work through in thinking about this, much like the Drejon Reed thing. I mean, look, I watched that whole video, and we were in the car with the guy for 10 minutes or so, I think. And his camera work is so terrible, but you actually see pretty much him from head to toe at some point. Yeah. So I don't see a gun. And then he gets out of his car and runs. And again, you run from the cops. There's probably going to be some consequences. It shouldn't cost you your life, I don't think. But he was holding the phone in one hand and running full speed. So was he going full Plaxico Burress here? Tucking in some sweatpants? I don't know. And the gunshots sound like they all come from away. I'm confused by the whole situation, because if he did turn and pull a gun, then police officers are trained to return fire. That is part of the job. But it also wouldn't be the first time that somebody overreacted and after the fact said there's a gun too. So there's just a lot of questions marks for that for me, and I'm trying to talk that out. Feel free to flame me, folks. That's part of what this is, because if I'm getting it wrong, if I'm not giving this the thought it needs, then I want to be told. And that's honestly one of the things I love is Evan will look me in the eye and be like, "Yeah, man, I don't think you got this one." So I'm just trying to work it out.
I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and then I may say that. I don't know, but let me just ask. Like, I've been focusing a lot on Drejon Reed and George Floyd. Were they told that the people inside the apartment, weren't they just told that they were like, I can't remember what it was. Was it a drug thing or what?
I believe it was drugs. I believe it was drugs, but with the notion that they were violent drug dealers.
Okay.
Because they always are, right?
Okay. Yeah. So here's my question. Why was it the Louisville PD? If it's violent drug dealers, why not ATF? Okay, who are better suited. I mean, I'm no disrespect to the Louisville PD. ATF's better suited. If they're violent drug dealers, in my mind, what I'm thinking is that as a police officer, even as a militarized police officer, it is my duty to go in and, first of all, to analyze the situation. Right? Like, you need to go in, and I know, and I get it, that this is hard. And please, anybody that's been in the military, all my military friends, please let me know. If you have an objective to take out a person, okay, that's one thing. If you have an objective to go in and take out bin Laden, you're going to take out everybody in your way to bin Laden. If you're just told, hey, we want you to go and raid this place, but there are some violent drug dealers there, that's pretty broad, which number one, piss poor planning.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, if you are a militarized police officer, and I use that phrase because that's exactly what has happened to our police. We expect our police to go into situations like this in which we think we've trained them well enough to handle it, but we really haven't. Because once again, and I will reiterate this is a peace officer force. This is what we are supposed to do, or this is what they're supposed to do as the police, be peace officers. They're not supposed to necessarily going on raids. Why did we put that on the police? Why did we put raiding on the police? That's a question we need to ask.
It goes back to our earlier point.
The police are a civilian force. They're not military. Yeah. This sounds to me, if you really want to go in and you want to raid a violent drug dealing ring, ATF needs to be all over this.
Yeah.
So failure number one. Number two, in assessing the situation, I will never ever put myself in the position of somebody who is looking down the barrel of a gun, pointing it towards somebody, having to make a split-second decision. My thing is that they shouldn't have been there in the first
Absolutely.
place.
Absolutely. It goes
Shouldn't have been
back
there
to
in
what
the
we were
first place.
saying about what do we want our police to be doing? What is our expectation?
Exactly.
And that has just continued to grow and expand when every new type of social issue comes up. These people aren't paid well. I don't know if a college education is required. I don't know that it necessarily should be, but I can tell you from my hometown, there was certainly a trend of guys who had gotten in a ton of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing you know, they're a county sheriff. Like this is your last chance, right?
That's a good point.
And we do that with the military too, right?
Exactly. That was going to be my
got no
point
chance.
next.
So what do we actually expect? It's almost on us as citizens to be like, well, how can we possibly expect somebody who was on their last chance to suddenly become the epitome of a model citizen? We're not exactly, and that's not everybody. I know there are plenty of people who it is, they believe it is one of their duties to serve this country in some capacity or another, whether that's through the military or as a police officer or a firefighter. I know a lot of those guys, right?
Yep,
And
absolutely.
That makes a ton of sense. But what are we asking them to do? Like if all of a sudden we had an expectation that firefighters had to resolve domestic violence issues for no apparent reason, like, hey man, you got a loud truck, we'll send you in, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's like, no, we're not properly trained for that. And again, something I read today, this, a once a month diversity training for police officers, or a couple hours learning how to deal with somebody who's on the spectrum.
Yeah.
No, this is not why they joined the police force. And we're asking them to do something that requires hundreds of hours of training. I mean, social workers require a lot of training. That's a stressful ass job, right? And
yes,
you're gonna give a police officer a couple hours of training and then show up. Well, look, when your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And
oh man, that's
when you
really good.
When you don't have enough training for something, and you are met with an escalating situation, and your gun is by your side, you pull your gun.
Sure.
In a lot of ways, I don't blame them, but at the same time, we have to hold them accountable. We have to say, this is not right. This is not what we want from our system.
That's it. That's it. We have to dismantle the system. And that is, once again, we talked about the defunding the police thing. It's not about necessarily getting rid of our police departments. It's literally, and I said this in my post, I wish they would change it to demilitarize. Yep. And that's everything about the police. When you defund, that's where I think you need to take the funding from. You need to take the funding from, why in the world does my little town that I grew up in have a SWAT team with a militarized vehicle? Why? I have no idea. I don't know.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And I mean, we know the sort of the why, because we have this whole military, funneling system. I'm sure in some ways it's a moneymaker. At the end of the day, you want to know what's wrong with everything. Probably just follow the money. But I wrote something down last night while watching that movie. And by the way, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. And I also highly recommend I remember when this movie came out a few years back, and I was in my car and listening to NPR, and they were interviewing the director, Raoul Peck. And I believe he's either Haitian American or he's a Haitian born person that moved to America. So he's, obviously got a unique perspective on things as well. And it was just a wonderful interview. I can't remember who it was that interviewed him from NPR, but it was just fantastic. So I'm sure you can find both. By the way, Amazon Prime, I am going to give a plug here. Amazon Prime right now any movie that is sort of related to sort of just the current period, in any movie that maybe teach some Black history, documentaries,
Netflix
that sort
has
of
that
thing.
too.
They
call that
it's
Black Lives Matter
yeah,
mix. That's what they call it.
It's all free right now on Amazon Prime. I forgot. Yes, Netflix has it. But I Am Not Your Negro is just phenomenal to watch, and I recommend it. But what I wrote down was ending slavery didn't end the system in place that allowed slavery to exist. And that's what we're dealing with today. People are like, oh, well, slavery's over. We've had a Black president. You've got a Black mayor. There are Black. Look at how many Black athletes make millions of dollars. How can Colin Kaepernick complain about anything? He probably doesn't get pulled over. That's not the point. There is a system in place that perpetuates the subjugation of anyone who is not white, European, straight male landowning in this country. And
that's right.
that is not an opinion. It is a fact. I'm not going to pussyfoot around that one anymore. Apologies for that, I guess, if that's offensive. But I'm not going to dance around that notion anymore, because we've seen it. We've seen it since day one. They actually wrote 3/5 into the goddamn Constitution, people. This they looked it straight in the eye and said, nah, we are superior.
Yes.
We are superior. And it requires so much energy and effort. And I'm telling you that like it's something new, because you've been fighting this your whole life. And honestly, it's always been something I've been aware of, but I think it's difficult to know when to interject yourself. What's tough for me right now is I'm a natural. I'm going to stand up and say something. I'm going to give my opinion about this. And there are times for me right now that it's important for me to be silent and listen. But when it's time to take action, I have to be one of the first to up. You know, and that's what people are talking about. We have to end this entire system of institutionalized guidelines and rules that disenfranchise an entire group of people, basically anybody who isn't me. Frankly.
So Aaron, let me do this, and if I can, let me just close this out right here, and then let's get to the Hey Aaron spot, man. You have nailed it in the fact that right now, the things that are happening, the discussions that are going on, the hard decisions that are having to be made. Once again, I can only speak for myself, but when I see, and this is what you can do, and I'm speaking directly to you, man. This is what you can do, is to keep having conversations with your white friends. Me talking and trying to teach white people, number one, that puts me in a situation where I speak for all Black people. I don't want to do that. Number two, I'm tired. I just don't have time to do it, quite frankly, and it's not my job to do it. Like I told you last week, anybody that's out there, you know, I think I told you last week that there's a closed group here in Hamilton County. We started on Facebook. And these are just people who want to learn, and I'm facilitating. I'm not saying shit. I'm throwing stuff out there for people to read, to think about, and interact with each other. And if I can be a facilitative educator and allow people to get information so that they can start thinking and having discussions with their peers as far as white friends are concerned, then I feel like, you know what, I've done what I need to do. But that's what you can do, man. And I know that it's hard for some of our people out there that may be watching. Guys, listen, if you're white in America now, quite frankly, yes, there are times when you need to be silent, when you need to hear our stories, when you need to hear that and need to be reinforced with the fact that this has been here, guys, for a long time. And it's not just, you know, you sitting through the Roots miniseries. It's not just you know, trying to be like, oh yeah, you know, hey, I'm with you. No, it's not that showy type stuff. It's that hard, digging deep, changing of your own mindset work that's going to happen across the board. And man, I know that you, Aaron, you've been doing that from day one, brother. And so that's why I appreciate you. Just keep doing what you're doing. And guys out there, seriously, keep doing what you're doing. If you have any questions, do your research first. Google it.
It's
Google's
easy.
awesome. It's so easy. But like I said at the beginning of the broadcast, then, go to your friends who may be Black or whatever and say, you know what, hey, I've read this and this really shook me to my core. Mm-hmm. Would you mind talking with me through this? That's a different conversation than someone just coming in blindly and asking what all Black people think. That is a conversation I would gladly have with anybody.
And I think to take the, I'm trying to think what the word is I'm looking for, but to pursue this, to educate yourselves on these things it's not about self-flagellation and I'm a bad person.
No.
It's about recognizing that we all may have some flawed viewpoints. We all may not just have enough information, enough experience at our hands. If you grew up in a small rural town, you may have no interaction with Black people. So your only understanding is going to be what you've seen on television or what you've heard from other people say. Mm-hmm. It's a moment to say it's not enough to say I'm not racist. You have to be anti-racist, anti-racist. And that's an acknowledgement that maybe sometimes you'll say something that is offensive accidentally, right? But it's acknowledging that if somebody says to you, hey, that's not cool.
Yeah.
Then you say, all right, I'm sorry. You don't double down on it, right?
Right. You don't go, oh, well, I'm just kidding. It's like,
if you get introduced to somebody and it's a formal introduction and they say, hey, Evan, meet Robert Smith. And he goes, hey, it's actually Bob. You can call me Bobby if you want. It's cool. I don't really dig Robert. And every time from that point forward, you call him Robert, you're being a jerk.
Yeah, you are.
It's a very simple thing, right? Like that's what political correctness is, people. It's being polite. You're taking the political part of it too far.
Yes.
It's polite correctness. If somebody wants to be called Peg and you call her Maggie the whole time, then you're being a jerk.
Yes.
And they have a right. You would be upset about that, right?
Yeah.
If you're like, oh, I really prefer to be called this way, and they just can't bring themselves to do it. Now imagine that not only are they not doing that with your name, they're not doing it with your humanity. They're saying, well, I'm sorry, I can't call you an African American because you're not from Africa. That's not the point.
It's not the point.
It's absolutely not the point. And it takes so little time, and it really just demonstrates your willingness to be an asshole for no good reason, to say, I just can't be bothered to do that.
Yep.
And it's little things like that make the change. I just shook the whole table. It's little things like that that make the change. It's not about saying, oh, I'm a terrible person, I have to do all these things. No, it's about recognizing that we could all be better, saying that, hey, I want to understand this whole Black Lives Matter thing. I'm there's a ton of books, literal ton of books that you can start with. You don't have to dive in to the hardcore Stokely Carmichael and Liberia and things that. Now you have to do all that, right? But just read a book from somebody else's perspective.
And don't ask me. Please don't ask me, because I'm just going to tell you go read a book anyway.
Yeah, do the work. Once you've done the work, it's fine. Come and say, hey, Evan, I was reading If Beale Street Could Talk.
Yeah.
Help me understand some aspect of this. Help me, I'm trying. I want to know. That's fine. But don't put the onus of learning history on somebody else.
Exactly.
And don't just consult one convenient source that soothes your white feelings. Because the whole point of protest, the whole point this is going on, is to make America uncomfortable. Because we've been way too damn comfortable sitting on the necks of people for 400 years, and it's getting old.
My man. So I'm going to tell you what, that leads me into the Hey Aaron segment. Hey Aaron, if you could have a beer with somebody that has lived in the past 400 years, who would you have a beer with?
Oh, man.
And you guys watching on live, you guys can answer that too, please.
He doesn't drink. So I have to toss out Gandhi. Gandhi's always been one of my amazing heroes. And again, do your research. In a strangely flawed dude with one of the greatest messages in history.
Yes.
Right now, I know it's going to sound so douchey, I guess. But I would have loved to have had a beer and a meal with Anthony Bourdain. What that guy tried to do in the seeming ease with which he flitted in and through cultures and recognized people, bore witness to their existence, and ultimately used food as just a jumping off point. You can watch his early stuff and see it's a little scripted and how they went back and forth. But you get into Parts Unknown, and this is a man who's simply using food as an excuse to show you the beauty and terribleness and diversity and chaos going on in the world around us. And to have spent an hour with him, to just chat, to talk about traveling, to talk about where we overlap on people, to talk about his love for music, his love for drugs and excess, his love for a good time. There are tons of people I could be choosing, but he's been on my mind lately because it's sadly the anniversary of his death. So he's just been in my feed, but I would have loved to have sat down and talked to that guy because he inspired me. I don't have a whole lot of pop culture type heroes, but I almost can't watch his shows anymore without just getting a little teary eyed, thinking that this wonderful flawed poet is no longer with us. It's sad. It hurts me, and I'm going to do a shot in honor of Tony Bourdain.
There you go.
Dude was a bad man. Oh, all right. Before we wrap up.
Jeez. Wow. Yeah, no, you stole mine. So good job. Yeah. Man.
I appreciate people tuning in. Oh, go ahead.
He reminds me a lot of you. No, he reminds me a lot of you, Aaron. And yeah, Bourdain is the guy that I think, man, can you imagine if he was around right now? Can you imagine if he was around to see what was happening right now, man? The shows that would just flow from him. Jeez.
I'd love to sit down with Anthony Bourdain and Hunter S. Thompson and dude, everybody at home, look this up. Look up a day in the life of Hunter Thompson and how he behaved. I'd like to spend a day with Hunter and Tony Bourdain.
There you go.
Probably making Tony wish he could do some of the things everybody was doing again. But yeah, we're missing their voices. Tony would definitely have a hell of a thing to say about what's going on right now, and he never held back. So he'd be saying it. He'd be saying it loud, and he'd be marching in the streets. Speaking of, I want to say this. Everything that's gone on in the last couple of weeks has really been a focus. And in some ways, I think it's perhaps they do go hand in hand, but it's June, it's Pride Month, and the LGBTQ community has been harassed and discriminated against in nearly the same levels as the communities of color have. They're definitely treated differently. They've definitely been ostracized, and they deserve the recognition. And I know that many people are walking in with the same solidarity. So I just want to put that out there. It's getting, you know, pushed out of the headlines a little bit, and obviously because of COVID, we're not going to get the pride parades and things that we may have in the past. But everybody out there know that we love and support you too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's important for representation. Saw a great sign about Black trans lives matter over the weekend, and that's definitely true too. So we stand with you all. I hear you. I see you. I'm with you. I'm trying to do the best I can, and I can always do better. Evan, love you. Another great one. I was glad to stand with you downtown, and I'm sure we'll be standing side by side, shouting very soon again.
Absolutely, my brother. Absolutely, man. Hey, guys, had a great show tonight. Appreciate you being with us. Aaron, as always, my friend, it's been great.
Take care. Love you all.
All right.